Hello there. How we doing? So today we're going to take a look at C++. What is C++? Do a couple, very small examples, kind of poke at the language a bit, kind of just get a brief introduction to what is C++. C++ is a programming language. As the name suggests, it's related to C, if you're familiar with C. So C++ is kind of a joke, being that it's an increment past C, or a step above C, if you want to say that. So it's just kind of built on C, just with some helpful libraries and ways to do things that are a little less painful. So where is C++ used? Used in the gaming industry. It's used in embedded systems. It's used basically any place you want high performance is the key there. So what is a C++ program look like? Let's jump right in. I like to write code to teach code if I'm able, so let's do that. So I'm going to make a new file here, and we are going to just start writing, and we will discuss as we go. Okay. So first off, let's do an include. So include is pulling in some sort of code or something from a different library. There's different ways to include things, but this is one of them. This is the first thing, and we'll discuss a lot of this later. So open and close less than or greater than symbols is how we tell it what we're after. So in this case, we're after IOStream. And again, we'll just kind of go through this briefly and discuss many of these things later. So we're going to go for basic here, and so we're not going to do some of the more fancy things that might appear in an initial hello world for C++. I'm going to try to keep it simple as we can possibly get. And so we will start with an int. So int is the data type, and it is a whole number, int, if you're not familiar. And this is what we will be returning from our main method. So that definition, just kind of quick summary, this is what we are planning to return, and this is the name of the method that we're going to execute. Okay, and we need some curly brackets. And here we will begin the meat of what will happen in our very complex Hello World program. So first we will say cout. So that is essentially how we are telling the system to print out some sort of message that we're planning to give the system. Okay, and these little less than symbols, we're essentially saying whatever is on this side, we're going to send that to the cout. Okay, and so we're going to have a string here, and to define a string we use a double quote. This is a string literal, and we will type hello world, if you can type, and end that with a double quote. So this is a string, and a string of chars to be specific, and we'll go over a lot of this later, but essentially this is, you could just treat this like text, like anything you would write that you just want to be shown as exactly how it sits there, right? And I'm going to end that here, and I will show you some parts of this that it will fail as is, and there will be an slight issue with the formatting, and we will go forward like this so that we can kind of learn what those issues are and see that as it presents itself. So we'll go ahead and save, and you probably can't see this, but we typically do hello world, and you want that to be a CPP file. Okay, we have saved here. Why does it do this to me? Yes, move it. I didn't want it there. I didn't tell you to put it there. This is where I want my file. Hello world.cpp. So you can see the name here and here. So this is our file structure. And down here as well, you can see our file. Ooh, no. It did not make it into the correct directory. Yes, move again. So now we see it correctly there. That's what we want. Alrighty. So back to our issues. So you can see above we have a squiggly here, the dreaded red squiggly. And if you hover, it says identifier C out is undefined, which means it does not know what that is. What is C out? It is confused. And on a Linux system, to compile this, we will use G++. And what we will provide is the name of the file. So in this case, it's hello world. And we're going to say -o, which is out. And we're going to just rename that hello world with no extension. We don't want an extension on this. It's the convention. Okay, so we press enter. And we will see some error. It's going to complain. It's going to say, what is C out? There we go. Same thing that we're seeing above, right? C out is undefined. C out was not declared in this scope. So it's trying to say, what is this magical C out you speak of? And so the problem is this, as it's laying out for us, this belongs to the standard library, which is shortened with std::. And so there are multiple ways, well, I guess 2 ways to do this, but we're going to do the simple way first, which is simply add std::. So now we're telling it, look in the standard library for this C out, and that's what we want. Okay, and now if we go back, we will try again, running the same command, and ta-da, there's no output, which generally in the Linux world means it's a good sign. You don't often expect to see output well, it's dependent upon the program. And so you can see here to the top of the CPP file, we now have this binary, which is just an empty, or excuse me, not empty, but a file with no extension. So we'll use this lsal command, and that will show you that they are different. So this number here in the middle is the size. So you can see here, the CPP file is very small, only 69 bytes. And then here it is much larger because that's compiled. So there's more code that was pulled in after compile time. But also you see this is highlighted, it's green. And if you look here, these are the permissions, the file permissions. So you can see that this has an executable. That's what the X stands for. So that means we can do something. We can run this, right? Okay, so let's do that. So in Linux, you press /. That is the way in which to execute a thing, or one of the ways at least. And we'll type in our hello world. And note that we're not using the CPP version. We are using the suffixed version, and we hit enter, and what we should expect is hello world to be hello world ! To be printed to our terminal. So let's do that. We see it is printed here, but what happened? It's kind of weird, right? It prints that, and then it has the name. This is my server name, excuse me, my PC name there. And so why is it that way? Can you think of why? Or are you familiar with why? Essentially, what it is that we need to tell it that we want this thing to create a new line for us, which we have not done. And so there are more than one way to do that. In this case, I will show you this way first. And this is a new line character in a Linux environment. We have a slash, no, that's a \n. So that's a special symbol that tells the system that there's a new line that should be added there. So now if we run this again, we will get the exact same output. Now why is it the same output? One, we have not saved here, but also we did not recompile. Every time you make a change to your files, you will need to recompile. So this compile step here, the G++, yada yada, that is compiling. So let's run that again. You see we have that, and execute. We see no errors, no output, which is good. And then if we execute again, it should look slightly different. Aha! There we go. So now it's on its own line, where we are seeing the new line pushed down as we probably expected. That looks much nicer, right? So this is the gist of a very basic program. Now, we did not return a value, and in this case it still works, it's not complaining, but we should have had a return statement here saying we want to return a number. Int is a numeric type, and that's what it's expecting. So we type return, and what we would like to return in this case is 0. In a Linux environment, in other environments, 0 is often thought of as good. Anything greater than 0 is some form of error, and so it will be treated as such. So we'll add this. Again, we will need to save. And as I said before, we have to recompile every time we make a new change, so we go ahead and do so, and running in, and what do you know, it looks exactly the same. In this case, that didn't do anything for us as the viewer of the output. You know, it is just convention, essentially. This is looking for that int to be returned properly. So if we had multiple method calls and we're expecting a return and we didn't get one, it may blow things up in a more noticeable fashion. So one other thing I'll point out while we're poking at Hello World here is we can do this in another way. We can use something called end line, right? That is shortened to endl. But this is also a part of the standard library. Okay, so in order to access it correctly, we also need the std::, and now it knows what to do. Okay, ready, and what do we need? That's right, compile. And we will execute again. And there we go, exactly the same result. So basically stating that this and the previous with the /n are equivalent. This is just a nicer way to do it. I'm assuming that end line here is system agnostic. And so doing this on a Windows system, you probably get the proper new line character, which is not common amongst different OSs. So if you have a Windows or a Mac or a Linux system, they have slightly different end line characters, so the new line character that you would be expected to be used. So this is a safer way. Okay, and that will basically summarize the most basic Hello World C++ program you can make. And we will continue to discuss more in our next video. Alright, well, thanks for joining me.